Welcome to the YouTube Creators Hub podcast, where we help you conquer the internet one video at a time. We cover everything from how to start a YouTube channel to how to make a video go viral. And now, here's your host, the one and only Dusty Porter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 315 of the YouTube Creators Hub podcast, the best and ultimate YouTube podcast on the internet. My name's Dusty Porter, the host of this wonderful show. Man, what a week it has been for the podcast, for the brand. It's been wonderful. We are approaching over 160 some odd thousand downloads of the podcast this month alone. You guys are killing it. School's starting back. People are getting their half-year resolutions or whatever you want to call them, and they're starting YouTube channels, and we are there to help them along the way, and I'm so excited to be here. If you don't know what we do here on the podcast, we interview wonderful YouTube creators every single Friday, 6 a.m., podcast goes live. You get a 30-minute to 45-minute interview with a wonderful creator where we talk about their journey, their path to success on YouTube. And I don't just interview large creators. I interview small creators, medium-sized creators, super huge creators, and everything in between. If you're looking to either start, grow, or monetize your YouTube channel, this is the podcast for you. And speaking of monetize, we've got to keep the lights on here at the podcast doors. So with that being said, this week we're brought to you, as always, by TubeBuddy. If you don't know what TubeBuddy is or what they do, please use our link in the show notes. Get that free 30-day free trial, that free month of utilizing TubeBuddy. I had to go back this week and replace a couple of links in like hundreds of videos, and TubeBuddy's bulk replacement tool made it a breeze. And I was so thankful for them, and I'm so thankful for them that they continue to support this show. And what do you have to lose? You get a free month of using every tool they have to offer, every feature they have, and I promise you will not regret it. It'll help me, it'll help you. It's a win-win, as I always say each and every week. Also, over on patreon.com/DustyPorter, you can support us over there. Throw us a couple of dollars each month, get access to our Discord server where we talk YouTube shop throughout the week. Also, if you support us at the analyst tier or higher, you will get a shout out once a month here on the podcast. And so I'm going to do that now. Coming in at the analyst tier this month is William Foley, Stephen Reich, Silas Swaim, Joshua Griffin. All of you guys are supporting me at the analyst tier or higher. And for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you guys so much. And one last thing, we have just now recently, last week, started the question of the week. If you listen to the interview, there will be a little bumper, and then we'll have our question of the week. And with that being said, you guys had a great response to that. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to answer your question from the previous week and give you the responses I received. And if you want to respond to the question of the week, you can do so by finding me over on Twitter at DustyPorterYT. Sending me a DM or tweet at me over there and let me know your thoughts on the question of the week. And so I will provide that and the responses after the interview. And so now that all of that is out of the way, let's jump into this week's conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's conversation on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. We have another killer interview for you guys this week. I'm joined today by Justin Moore. He is a sponsorship coach and the founder of The Creator Wizard over on YouTube, TikTok, all the socials. It's a school and a community that teaches you how to find and negotiate your dream brand deals so that you stop leaving thousands on the table. Along with his wife, April, he has been a full-time creator for over 8 years and has personally made over $4 million working with brands. He also ran an influencer marketing agency for over 7 years that has helped other creators earn an additional $3 million. Justin brings a very unique perspective because not only has he been a creator in the trenches doing sponsorships for years, also, by running the agency, he has insider knowledge behind how big brands choose which influencers to partner with and why they pass on others, and I think that's going to be critical for this interview today. Justin's mission is to enable creators big and small to land 1 million paid brand partnerships by 2032. Justin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dusty. Thanks for having me, man. Stoked to be here.
Absolutely. I think we got a lot to cover, a lot to talk about, so we're just going to go ahead and dive in. I talked a little bit about your history. Can you talk about just the origin story of the Creator Wizard brand and YouTube channel and kind of how that came to be?
Of course, man. So, as you mentioned, my wife, April, and I, we've been on YouTube since 2009. So we're, I guess you could say OG creators. To be honest, there's not a ton of us left who are still like posting actively on the platform. So, it's definitely been, a roller coaster for us over the years. I mean, we started on YouTube before there was a partner program, before you could make money on AdSense, right? So it was way back in the day. And so, we really have kind of grown up on the platform. We started before we were married. Now we're married. We have 2 kids. We've been doing this full time for, almost a decade now. And so, we have had just a ton of experience working with brands. That's always been like a really, primary way in which we've made income as YouTubers, as creators. And so, we've been doing deals for a very long time. And then the other side of it, as you mentioned, is that, diversifying our family income. This was the logic. So about 7 years ago, we were thinking like, okay, well, things are going pretty well on YouTube now, but like what happens when people stop watching, or, we don't make as much money on sponsorships, or, are we really going to be able to maintain the same level of influence, and viewership in 10 years and 15 years, right? We were already thinking about this very long time horizon. And so that was when I decided to start this agency called Trending Family to bring other brand partnerships to other creators. Because our logic was like, we're working with these awesome brands. They are still very tentative. They're still very hesitant to like work with creators in a large way because, they don't want a PR crisis. They, are still very used to like doing these really high, productions with like a full crew, and like working with creators who shoot it on their own cameras in their own house with no one supervising. That was very scary to a lot of folks, right? And so our goal with doing the agency was like, okay, well, we can take our expertise of like, doing these awesome partnerships and telling the brands like, hey, do you want to work with other like creators? We can essentially be the liaison to bring more awesome activations to life. And so have this very interesting perspective where I've seen both sides of the table. And then about 2 years ago, this was right after COVID hit. I actually just released a video on my YouTube channel announcing that I'm actually shuttering the agency, and there's a whole host of reasons why. But one of the major things that I noticed was that there was this giant cohort, this giant pool of creators who were, let's say, between 10,000 subscribers and 150,000 subscribers, who were not quite big enough yet to have a manager, but they were making money, right? They were doing sponsorships. They were making money on AdSense, right? And they had no one to guide them. They had no mentorship other than your podcast, Dusty, obviously. But they had no one to guide them on the business side of things. And so I thought to myself, like, there needs to be some content out there talking about, mistakes that I'm seeing created. Because honestly, I have been on the receiving end of so many literally thousands and thousands of emails from creators through the agency. And so I see what everyone is doing wrong, right? They're like, I'm sending them, we're sending them this really long email about a campaign, and they're replying yes right to the email. It's like, no, you can't do that, right? And so just like, that's a small example, but it's like, I really felt compelled, like this content, this expertise, this advice needs to exist out there, and that's why I started Creative Wizard.
So there's a lot of things that I want to ask about the YouTube channel in general, but I want to ask you this because you have worked with so many creators and you've done so much volume yourself with sponsorships and brand deals and things like that. Do you mind explaining and walking my audience through from start to finish what it looks like to land a successful brand deal or sponsorship for your YouTube channel? So let's just say TubeBuddy, because they're the sponsor of this show, obviously, and we all know who and what they are. Let's say TubeBuddy is the sponsor of choice. They're the company you want to kind of bring onto your channel. So let's use them for example. Do you mind just walking us through from A to Z what that looks like?
100%. So this is actually, I'm really glad you brought this up because I don't get to talk about this very often, which is that there is a very standardized approach to how you should be working with sponsors. And a lot of creators think like it's very confusing. It's like every brand is different, but it's like, in my experience, again, I've done hundreds, if not thousands of sponsorships by now. And 99.9% of any sponsorship that you're ever going to do on YouTube will follow these 8 steps, Dusty. So I've created a framework called the sponsorship wheel, and it's 8 steps that you should walk through whenever you are partnering with the brand. And so step 1 is the pitching stage. This is where either you are reaching out to the brand and trying to pitch them cold, right? You're saying, hey, I love your brand. I'd love to collaborate with you. Here's some ideas. Or the brand is reaching out to you. I think a lot of creators don't think of that as a pitch, but when a brand reaches out to you with an inquiry saying that they want to partner with you, you also have to put together in response to that a pitch or a proposal saying, okay, hey, yeah, this sounds interesting. I can definitely do that. Here's what I can, here's what my rate's going to be. Here's all the different things I can do for you. That's interesting, what you're asking for, but I would actually love to do it slightly differently. I would like to add, posts on this platform or et cetera, right? And so that is the pitching phase is step 1. Step 2 is the negotiation phase. So once the brand has said, oh, you know what, this actually sounds interesting. I think we would like to proceed. What would that look like in terms of, the investment required, all the different deal dynamics, right? In terms of like understanding the deliverables. What are they actually, is it an integrated video versus a dedicated video? Is it, are you going to be amplifying the content on social media in some way, like cut downs of the YouTube video, right? Understanding the usage rights, understanding the exclusivity terms. Like there's all these different components of a deal that are really critical that you have to negotiate ahead of time before you actually get the contract in your hand. And then step 3 is that contracting phase. So that's where you're actually getting the written agreement from the party, or you're providing that to them, and ensuring that the all of the deal points that you negotiated in step 2 are memorialized and articulated in this written agreement. Step 4 is the concepting phase. So this is one that maybe creators listening to this have had some experience if they've ever worked with the brands, that some brands will actually ask you, hey, can you share 2 or 3 sentences of your concept of like how you actually will plan on bringing this campaign to life. We want to actually provide feedback on that to ensure that we're not, needing to revise it, you have to reshoot or whatever if it's not the concept that we're really hoping for. And one of the things I teach in my courses and my coaching and content and things like that is that even if the brand is not asking you for a concept, it's your job as a professional creator to provide one to them before you film and saying, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. Do I have your blessing, essentially, right? Because that's going to minimize a lot of the extra work and frustration that often comes with having to revise stuff and reshoot stuff. Step 5 is the production phase. So this is actually where you get the green light on your concept and you're going to actually create the content, right? And so understanding best practices associated with ensuring that there's not a Nike logo on your hat when you're shooting the video, right? That the brand is going to get super, they're not going to be pleased with, and the legal team is going to say, hey, you need to reshoot this whole thing without a Nike hat, right? Because that, we're Adidas, you're doing a deal for Adidas, right? This kind of thing, right? And so there's all these things related to the product to doing a streamlined production. And then step 6 is the feedback phase. This is the one that I often hear the most complaints from creators, the most frustration, because it's like, man, these brands, they say they want it to be authentic and organic and like, oh, just use your voice. But then when they come back with their feedback, it's like, do this, chop out this 15 seconds and reshoot this and do a new voiceover and yada, yada, yada. And so there's a lot of frustration and anxiety in this phase. And so it's so critical to understand how you can align expectations so that, that when you do receive feedback, it's not unreasonable. Again, this is a business transaction, so you understand that it's reasonable for them to actually have certain requests. And so that's step 6. Step 7 is the publication phase. So this is where you have your checklist, you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and you're ensuring that, when you actually publish this video, the link in your description box is clickable. It's not going to the wrong place. The promo code is working that they provided to you, right? That, when the person, lands on that landing page that's actually viewing your content, the product is still in stock, right? There's all these different things that you would think, oh, well, that's the company's, that's the brand's responsibility. But actually, no, it's your responsibility as a creator, because who is your viewer? Who is your audience going to get mad at if any of that stuff happens? They're going to get mad at you, right? And so these are a lot of the things that I cover and talk about is like, professionalizing yourself as a creator and understanding that a lot of this actually does fall back on you and your business. And then the last round, Dusty, is step 8, which is the invoicing round, which is this is where you're actually, saying, hey, thank you very much, pay me, but also let me put together a post-campaign report with insights after a little bit of time has passed so that I can then pitch you again on the next idea. So yeah, here's some insights for the campaign we just did. But the reason that this is called a sponsorship wheel and that these are 8 steps is that the moment that you end this partnership, that's now the trigger for you to pitch them on the next idea. Because a lot of creators, they work with the brand once and then they literally never talk to them again. And this is the core of what I teach, is that it's so much easier to convince a brand that you just work with to hire you again. So yeah, I know that was a lot, but nuts to bolts, this is kind of the framework that I teach.
No, I love that. I may have you send that to me if you have that written somewhere. I'll put it on the website.
I do
for the podcast. I want to ask you shortly about common mistakes that creators make. But before I do that, I get a lot of comments, and when I get on coaching calls, and I'm sure you do as well, well, I don't think I'm big enough to get a sponsor yet, or I don't think my content is ready, or I don't have enough subscribers, or enough this or that. I kind of want you to debunk a few myths for me, Justin, if you don't mind. I mean, there isn't really a magic number as to when you should start reaching out. If anything, get your chops, while you're working early on, even if you don't land deals, kind of working on your pitch phase. So talk about that for a minute, of how a lot of creators don't realize it, but they're ready for this process. They just think they're too small or not ready yet.
So I have a YouTube video on my channel called "How to Get Sponsorships with 0 Subscribers," because I wanted to make something kind of like facetious and hyperbolic, because honestly, like, one of my goals is to help creators understand that there's so much more value that you have beyond your vanity metrics, beyond how many subscribers you have, or your average viewership, or whatever your engagement rate, whatever it is, because here's the best explanation I can give of this, is that as a YouTuber, like, we spend day in and day out analyzing. We live in our YouTube analytics dashboard, right? We're looking, how did our, is it a 1 out of 10? Is it like, how is the CTR? Like, what's my retention, right? We're like living and breathing. How's this content compared to my other videos, right, that I've done over the last 3 days? And so, like, we're living and breathing that every single day, because to us, that is those are our success metrics, right? Like, that's from a performance perspective, that's how we're analyzing our videos that we're putting out there. But when you work with a brand, oftentimes they have very different success metrics, right? And so let me explain the 3 different campaign goal types that pretty much every brand has when they partner with creators. So the first one is conversion focus. So this is, a brand who has reached out and says, hey, we'd love you to talk about our brand. And, our goal is we want to drive like downloads on our mobile game, or we want to drive sales, or we want to drive, clicks to our website that we're putting in the description box, or whatever. That is a conversion focused campaign, right? So that's one type of campaign. The next type of campaign is what's called repurposing, content repurposing. So they say to you something like, we really love your channel, you make awesome content, and we really would love for you to actually use your content embedded on our website, maybe repost it on our social media, maybe we use it for paid advertising, and so on. So like, that's a totally different type of campaign. And then the last one is brand awareness. So this is where, the brand comes to you and says things like, oh, it's a product launch, or we're just trying to spread the word. But the metrics that they're tracking and measuring are kind of squishy, right? It's like views, maybe impressions, comments, engagement, and so on. And so one of the things that I teach is that this is the number one thing that, regardless of how many subscribers you have, that you should be asking a brand. Because let's say you ask them, hey, brand X, what does success look like for you? What is your goal, collaborating, for this campaign? And they say something like I said about content repurposing, hey, we really just want to, we love to use your content for ads. So your proposal to them, Dusty, is, oh, that's so interesting that's your goal. I could actually create for you 5 or 10 30-second videos that I don't even post, that you can utilize for paid advertising. You can A/B test them. Everyone knows that, you never know what's going to hit in the, if you're advertising on YouTube TrueView or Facebook or Instagram, business, ad marketplace or whatever. Here's a bunch of content. I can say different things. I can do different hooks. I can, we can test out different messages. What do you think, right? You told me your goal is content repurposing. Here's my proposal. I'm not even going to post on my YouTube channel. And you know what the beautiful thing about this type of campaign, Dusty, is that it now, how many subscribers you have is completely irrelevant. And the amount of money that you can charge them is completely detached from the amount of subscribers that you have, right? So it's just like one small example of like, you may think that, 3,000, 5,000 subscribers or whatever is small, but to the brand in your niche, in your category, who hasn't figured it all out yet, to them, this is just Dusty's portfolio, right? He's now looking at his channel as, that's all you need to point to show that you have the credibility to do what you're proposing.
Yeah, I just think that oftentimes, especially beginner creators and smaller creators, don't have that mindset of whether it be kind of the I'm not good enough or I'm not big enough or whatever they have in their mind to block them away. And oftentimes creators don't get those sponsorships early on. I wish I would have known some of this stuff 10 years ago, because when my channel was growing quickly in the beginning, I could have really made some money. And now I know all of these things and doing the type of content that I do, whereas used to, I would have to reach out to these software companies and say, hey, I do how-to content. I think I'd be great for your business. Now, a lot of the larger companies reach out to me when they have a new update or a new version, and they say, hey, Dusty, listen, you've worked with us before, or I've seen what you did with company A, B, or C. Would you like to do the same for us? Knowing where your content fits in and understanding you don't have to reach some magic number in order to have that. So I absolutely love that. So I read out in your intro that personally you've made over $4 million working with brands. Learning, I'm sure you've learned a lot, as we had just mentioned and talked about. What is something, can you give us like an estimation of some of your clients that you've worked with, Justin? Folks think that the only thing that you can make money off of with YouTube is AdSense and ad revenue, and that is so not true. That is such an illusion of people's minds. And so can you just talk about maybe you personally working with those brands, kind of how your revenue splits between ad revenue, sponsorships, and affiliates?
100%. Yeah. So I'm very transparent about all this stuff, Dusty. I've shared on Twitter recently, like my wife and I made $700,000 last year. And so the split was, a big chunk with sponsorships. We are actually doing Amazon Live now. So we're doing live commerce, which is has become a huge revenue stream for us over the last 18 months. But then, and so that includes like Amazon Associates, affiliates, and so on. And then, we still make money off of AdSense, and then the agency Trending Family, but then also my courses and coaching and so on. So those are kind of the 5 main buckets for us personally as creators. But I would say the most illustrative example of like our split between sponsorships and AdSense is that about 7 years ago, 97% of our monthly income as creators was AdSense, right? And so at the height, when we were like, our channel, our viewership was like really popping, like we would do like, we had some months where we were doing like 25K a month on AdSense. And our brand deal, like percentage of that was like 3%. So 97% AdSense, 3% brand deals. Okay. Right. And that was like 7-8 years ago. And now it is literally completely the opposite. It is 97% brand deals, 3% AdSense in terms of like the YouTube side of stuff. Right. And so like it has been a absolutely massive shift. And there's two reasons for these kind of intersecting, or like completely flip-flopping trend lines. The first one is that, the amount of brands and sponsors who are excited about working with creators has just exploded. It's proliferated to such a massive degree that, not just consumer brands now, but also B2B brands, like you said, software brands or technology brands, like B2B influencer marketing is becoming a much larger thing now. So it's like people understand now that, finding the right partners, working with the right influencers can have a very profound impact on your brand or your company. And so there's just like so much more deal flow than there was 7-8 years ago. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is that, the amount of, monetizable ad inventory, like the amount of, videos that you can post that will actually get monetized, and, the RPM or the CPM that you can actually get for those videos is depressing. I mean, it's like going down, depressing in the word of like declining, right? And so those two reasons, it's like it's all the more reason to like look at sponsorships as a very, very compelling revenue diversification strategy for your own business. I saw a creator, fairly prominent in their niche, Dusty, share on Twitter recently that they've been a creator for 3 years on YouTube, and over the last 3 years, they have made $7,000 on AdSense, and they just got one sponsorship for $10,000, right? And so imagine, like, think about how much work and effort went into like making that $7,000 in AdSense and uploading and all that stuff. And obviously you had to have all that to get the sponsorship, but it just goes to show like the budgets and the, mindset that a lot of brands and companies have when they work with you is just completely detached from like, how, like what you would think would be, reasonable or realistic as a creator to charge.
Yeah, I remember early on in this podcast life cycle, and it's something that I'm going to announce in the intro of this episode that you guys are listening to today. We are approaching the 8 million downloads mark on this podcast, and
wow.
This podcast continues to grow leaps and bounds. It's because of these wonderful folks who are listening to us right now. But I remember talking to Phil. He was the original creator and owner of TubeBuddy, and I reached out to them just like you mentioned in your talking about the pitch phase, and I reached out to him, and I remember this was almost 8 years ago now, and I said, hey, listen, I know the podcast is not big. I've only got 23 episodes. I'm getting around 500 downloads per episode, and then after 2 to 4 weeks, I'm getting anywhere from 750 to 1,000 downloads. And he took a chance on me, and we looked at the rates, and he and I looked together because it was something I was very new at, and we formed a friendship, obviously, and we still have that friendship to this day. But I remember thinking, when he told me he would sponsor $100 an episode, I thought to myself, "Oh my goodness, this is it! I'm
rich.
I'm rich. I've made it." And at that point, I was making about $1,000 a month on AdSense, and I'm so I don't ever talk down on AdSense because I'm so thankful for it, and it's such a benefit for creators, especially getting started and to kind of supplement your income. But I remember thinking, oh man, I'm rich. And now that the show, gets anywhere from 30 to 50,000 downloads an episode, I'm able to really increase that, of what I'm worth and what the podcast is worth. And, TubeBuddy's been with me from the beginning, and they've allowed me and continue to support me and provide me more as the show has grown. But understanding your worth, understanding your value as a creator is such a big deal. And I think that if somebody's listening to this and they hear you say those numbers, they hear you say $700,000 last year you and your wife did. And I will, this is a caveat to saying this, that, Justin, aside from the Creator Wizard channel, he also has April Justin TV. You also have Cook with April, and then you have your other channel of your wife's as well. And so you've got all of these channels and selling ads, and sponsorship for multiple channels. And it has taken you time to work and to grow these channels. So I want to ask you now about the YouTube side of things, Justin. Now that you've grown multiple channels and you're killing it, I'm so impressed with kind of your repertoire, what you've got out there right now. Give some pointers and some things that you've learned along the way as far as growing a YouTube channel from a small channel to a large channel. What are some things that you've learned and some things that you would recommend folks look into?
Yeah, I think that the biggest, lesson that we've learned over the years has been that you can't keep making the same content that worked 3-4 years ago.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That was actually like a really big insight for us over the last, number of years.
Do you mind giving an example of that? Because I think that's such a key point, and not very many people have mentioned that here on the podcast. Can you talk about that for a minute? Like, give me an example of maybe older type content that you did in the transition that you made or the pivot.
Well, it's just like, I would say that the biggest reason for this is, we come from, we remember the days of when, watch time was not the primary metric that
Correct.
YouTube emphasized, right? It was like, these were the days of like people doing really clickbait thumbnails, and like getting the click was all that mattered, because it did not matter how long people actually watched your video or when they bailed or audience retention or any of that stuff. So again, this was 2009, like early days. And so like we distinctly remember this transition where it was like, okay, well, like it no longer matters like how many views you're getting or how many people are actually clicking through necessarily. It's like, how long are people actually sticking around and watching, and how many videos are they watching on your channel in the same watch session, right? And so for us, that was like a big inflection point for us to like really look at our content critically to say, okay, from a storytelling perspective, from a hook perspective, from a title topic perspective, what exactly should we be doing to really continue to stand out in our niche in this space? It's a little bit different because like we also had a family vlog channel. I mean, we still have it. That's like still probably our most active channel. And like we have never been the ones to like, have these really crazy thumbnails and like, oh my gosh, this, something emergency has happened or whatever. Like, we've never done that. We've never like felt the need to like, grow our business in that way. And so like one tip I have is like, you always have to stay true and consistent to your integrity and your self and your mental health. And like, I know it's very easy to get trapped into this mindset of like, do anything that you have to do at all costs to like, grow and get that CTR and like get the audience retention. And like, I don't know, a big lesson, maybe this is not the direction you thought I would take this question, but like that really is where my mind goes. Is like, we've been doing this for so long that like, I believe it's more important in the long run and the pride of like wanting to do this for a long time to like continue to try to make content that resonates with yourself, because otherwise you're really going to kind of burn yourself out trying to appease the social algorithm gods. Yeah,
that's so true. You're exactly right, because it's one of those things to where I've had to make changes in kind of how I've done my content and how YouTube works is completely different than what it was 10 years ago when I started, and learning that and understanding that and being happy with what I create too, like being proud of what I'm doing and being happy is just is such a big deal.
You know what, Dusty, like I want to, this is a great segue to talk about this topic that I don't really get to talk about very often, which is that like you hear me saying like, be authentic and all this stuff. And to some degree, like that has meant that some of our channels, some of our content has, like our viewership has been probably the lowest it's ever been. Like if you look back at, our vlog channel, for example, from 7-8 years ago, we were doing like hundreds of thousands of views every single video. This was right around when my wife was pregnant and we were sharing the pregnancy journey, like those life milestones that a lot of people really love to follow, right? But now it's like, we bought the house, our kids are older, we're not adopting, we're not doing all these other things that a lot of, continue to like drive views, quote unquote, for some vlogging channels, right? And so you could look at our top level viewership and be like, oh, well, that channel is dead or it's not doing well. But we have made the most amount of money on sponsorships that every single year since then, right? And so one of the biggest things that I teach is that, again, it's not all about the views. It's not all about, the top line subscribers, because we have developed this Rolodex and these relationships with these brands and these agencies, having worked with them for many, many years, where they know, hey, we've got an urgent campaign that we really have to turn around quickly. Let's go hire April and Justin because we know it's going to be done well. It's going to be professional. They're going to be communicative. They're going to be responsive. If anything comes up, they've got our back. We'll do a quick voiceover. It's not a big deal, right? So we've developed this reputation as really, really reliable creators. And to a lot of brands and agencies, that's the most important thing. That is the most important thing, not how many views the video got, right? And so, like, again, it's not all about these vanity social metrics when it comes to sponsorships. Like, you can make a lot of money even if you're not at the height of your influence.
Yeah, I love that. You're so right in all the points that you just brought up. And I think it's a YouTube wide thing though, as far as views and being at the lowest point. Not necessarily that, but I know my channel, had done very, very well right when the pandemic started, because I do how-to content and folks were at home wanting to learn how to stream and do things that I teach on YouTube. And so obviously it went up and now it's back down. The emotional roller coaster that you go through as a YouTuber sometimes can be so stressful. And it's just one of those things to where you got to stay the course and understand that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I love talking about this topic around sponsorships and other ways in which you can provide value to others, whether it's sponsorships or whether it's, coaching, right? You're helping people in your community do things, right? Because it's like helps you detach your identity and your feeling of self-worth from your YouTube channel, right? Because a lot of times it's like your mood or is like your disposition is directly tied to like, how many views did I get in the last 28 days or whatever, right? And it's like there's all these other things that you have learned, even though you may not feel like an expert or even though you may be at the outset of your creator journey, like you have worth, you have value, you have expertise that other people will pay you for, right? And so like I just think it's so critical that we don't look at YouTube as the only goalpost for our feelings of happiness and success.
All right, this has been awesome. I feel like we should have a part 2 of this because we're already at the 30-minute mark, and I've got a bunch more questions for you. So we'll definitely do that in the very near future.
Absolutely, man. But happy to be back anytime. And, I'd love to stay connected with anyone who's interested in this, topic. I get this, Dusty. I have a newsletter where I literally send you every week paid sponsorship opportunities. It's a free newsletter, right? So in addition to like tips and tricks and pitching strategies and pricing and all that stuff, I also, again, share all these opportunities. So if you'd love to, stay connected, it's just creatorwizard.com/join.
Yep. So creatorwizard.com/join. He's Creator Wizard over on YouTube. And then his other channels, as I mentioned earlier, Cook with April Justin TV. And there's just so much good stuff that you got going on. I really appreciate your time today, Justin. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dusty.
It's time for the question of the week. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the question of the week for this week's episode 315. You can respond over on Twitter at DustyPorterYT. Last week's question was the following. What is the hardest thing for you as a creator in your day-to-day workflow? Got one coming in from James L. over on Twitter. He says, the hardest thing for me is time management between my family, kids, other responsibilities, and a full-time job. YouTube sometimes has to take a back seat. James, I feel you, my friend. I'm not there right now in the season of my YouTube channel, but I have been, and I know exactly what you're going through. Next one was a direct message coming from Leslie Gonzalez. I believe it's Leslie G, but I can't, for some reason, it's cut off on my screen. But Leslie says, the hardest thing for me has been thumbnail and channel design aesthetically. I have a really hard time designing my channel and getting it streamlined, like you say on the podcast. Thanks for the show. Really appreciate the interviews. Leslie, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the last one I'm going to read today is coming from Gracie, I believe is her name. And she says, the hardest thing for me for my YouTube channel is understanding how to read all of the analytics and data that YouTube provides us in the dashboard. Really appreciate the podcast. Thanks for the new question of the week feature. Hey, I appreciate it. I like it a lot too. I can't wait to kind of expand upon it and see kind of where it goes. I love that. Great responses. Would love to have you respond. Again, find me on Twitter at DustyPorterYT over there and shoot me a mention over there, and I'd love to read your response on next week's episode. And this week's question of the week is the following. What has stopped you from reaching out to partners to sponsor your videos? If you don't have partnerships yet, what has stopped you? And if you do, what has been your hardest thing to deal with in the whole sponsorship situation as far as getting one to sponsor a video or to partner with you with your YouTube channel? So let me know. Would love to know. Find me on Twitter. Already let you know. All of the information will be in the show notes. Thank you guys for listening. See you next week.
You've been listening to the YouTube Creators Podcast. We want to thank you and invite you to subscribe to the show, as well as support us on Patreon for great perks, such as having your YouTube channel featured on the show and a link on our website. Until next time, keep uploading those videos.